Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to Quha webinar using Quha Zono as a secondary access device to eyegaze. So my name is Jussi Kujanpää and I'm the managing director of Quha company. So during the presentation, please send all your questions or comments either to YouTube live chat or then by email to webinar@quha.com address. Then, so what is a secondary access to eyegaze? It means that an eye tracker and another assistive mouse, they are both connected to a same computer simultaneously. For example, it can be Tobii PCEye and Quha Zono 2 mouse. And then the user can switch between these two access methods. But of course, like when selecting any of the assistive access method, it must be selected based on the user's capabilities. But if the user can move his or her head, so one good possibility for this secondary access device could be Quha Zono 2 mouse. Then, why to use secondary access method? There are several reasons to use a secondary access method, but these are the most common ones. So maybe the tasks that the user is doing, maybe they require more precision. For example, if the user is using a design software, so this requires more precision that eyegaze can provide. Then using eyegaze, like you know, it can be exhausting to the users and the eyes, and a secondary access device can provide some short relief for the eyes for a moment. Then external conditions can prevent the eyegaze use. For example, sunlight can be a stopper for eyegaze in many cases. Then say if the user has a progressive illness like ALS, so maybe it's a good idea to start already with two devices from the very beginning. If the user learns to use, for example, Quha Zono and then eyegaze device, so during the progress of the illness there won't be any learning curve for him or her. Secondary access device also provides a backup access method if needed. And then quite common case actually is that the many applications, especially many games, they don't support eyegaze, but they support mouse. So using a mouse instead of eyegaze for games enables playing games for the users. And also many users want to use several displays. They have a kind of monitor array on their desk, but that is not supported by eyegaze. It only supports one display. So that's why maybe a secondary access method is a good option. Then how this is done? So the most common way is that both access methods are connected to the computer simultaneously, but only the one that is currently used is activated and the other one is paused. So as an example, so Quha Zono 2 is easily paused and unpaused with a gesture, and also Tobii Windows control has a shortcut to unpause and pause just by looking outside of the screen. Okay, now I will have a short demonstration where I'm using actually Tobii PCEye Mini and Quha Zono 2 mouse. Okay, So I already have the Tobii Windows Control software open on my PC. The eyegaze is now paused, and I just remove my eyeglasses so the eyegaze works a little bit better for me. I also use Quha Zono 2 mouse, which is currently paused, and now I start by unpausing the eyegaze, and that's done by looking below the display for a moment and then gazing the unpause window. So now the eyegaze is active, and I open a web browser like this. Now I use the on-screen keyboard and write a search term Quha. So I want to open our web page. Like this. And at this point I could change the access method to the secondary access method, so Quha Zono 2. So I start that by unpausing the eyegaze. And that's also done by looking below the display and then selecting the unpause window, and now the eyegaze is paused. And now I need to unpause the Quha Zono 2, and that's done by a gesture. So I will just shake my head once. And now it's unpaused. Then let's say that I want to scroll the screen, and I will do that with a gesture. So I will nod my head twice, so like this, and now I can scroll the screen. Okay, and I exit the gesture. So now I want to switch back to the eyegaze, so I start by pausing the Quha Zono 2, and that's also done by a gesture. So now it's paused, and now I unpause the eyegaze. Like this. So now the eyegaze is back active. Okay, so now I'm happy to answer any of your questions or comments, so please send those either using the YouTube live chat or then by email to webinar@quha.com. So do we have any questions?
Yeah, so far we have received 2 questions by email, and the first one is can I use Quha Zono with all eyegaze devices?
Okay, so the question was, can I use Quha Zono with all eyegaze devices? So the answer is basically yes. There are a few exceptions, but those are not related to Quha Zono, but to the system where the eyegaze is used. But for all the devices that are using, for example, Windows, so those are 100% compatible with both eyegaze and Quha Zono. But then, for example, iPad is a different story because it only supports one mouse, so it can't be. It requires disconnecting and reconnecting the devices to switch the access method. But like you know, Quha Zono is compatible with all operating systems and all devices currently on the market.
Okay, the second question is who would be a typical eyegaze and Zono user?
So the question was, who are the typical Zono and eyegaze users? So I think there are two main groups actually. So the other one are users who have good head movements, for example some tetraplegic users, but who do require either more precision, for example for design, or then the applications are such that they are not compatible with gaze, for example games. So I think this is one group, and then other group is users who have a progressive disease like ALS. So those users who want to have two access methods just in case the other one is not usable at the moment. Yeah. So I think those are typical two user groups. Do we have any other questions?
So I cannot see other questions in the live chat or email at the moment.
Okay. If there are no other questions, so I'd like to thank you very much for attending our webinar, and it will be available later on the YouTube. We will send you the link, and also if you have any other questions, so please send those to email webinar@quha.com and we will answer those offline. Okay, thank you very much.